The air was heavy with smoke and dust. The battlefield had fallen silent after the last clash, but silence here never meant peace. Broken machines lay scattered, half buried in the ash, and the ground trembled now and then with distant explosions. Among this ruined land, one human walked slowly, his steps heavy, his body supported by an old exoskeleton suit that whirred and groaned with every move. In his arms lay an alien girl, her skin pale, her breathing shallow. She was badly injured, one of her legs twisted unnaturally and her body weak from blood loss. She tried to lift her head, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Leave me. Please, I will only slow you down." The human stopped for a moment, looking down at her face. His eyes were hard, but filled with something strange, something she did not expect from a human soldier. He shook his head slowly, tightening his grip around her. "Not leaving you," he said, his voice rough and stubborn. The girl's golden eyes widened with disbelief. For her kind, humans were known as survivors. Cold and pragmatic, they saved their own first. They never carried dead weight. She thought he was foolish. "The enemy will come," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "They will find us, and you will die because of me." The human's jaw clenched. He took another step forward, then another. The exoskeleton creaked loudly, metal joints straining as he carried both his weight and hers. "Then let them come," he muttered under his breath. "I won't let you die here." The wasteland stretched endless before them, a world of gray and red. The sky was covered in clouds of ash and the sun was only a dim light struggling to shine through. The air was toxic, each breath burning the throat. His exoskeleton pumped filtered oxygen into his lungs, but the system was old. Every mile drained the battery faster. Behind them, faint sounds echoed. Metallic footsteps, alien hounds, and guttural voices. The hunters were coming. She heard them too, and her heart sank. Tears welled in her eyes. "You cannot fight them while carrying me," she pleaded. "Leave me, please, I beg you." He glanced back at the shadows moving in the distance. His grip tightened around her fragile body. "I've carried heavier loads," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips, though his eyes remained cold and focused. "You're not slowing me down." She could not understand him. No one had ever risked so much for her before. Her people had abandoned her when she was captured. Even her own squad had run when the battle turned. But this human, a stranger, refused to let her go. They moved through broken streets of what once had been a colony town. Buildings lay in ruins, glass shattered, steel beams twisted like broken bones. He stepped carefully, avoiding open craters and collapsed roads. The exoskeleton hissed, warning lights blinking red across his visor. Every step was pain. His muscles ached even with the suit's support. His back burned, sweat poured into his eyes, but he kept walking, one slow step at a time. His boots crunched over rubble, his breath loud inside his helmet. The girl kept staring at him. Her voice was weak, but stubborn. Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You owe me nothing. You are human. I am not. We are enemies." For a long moment, he said nothing, his eyes locked forward, scanning for threats. Finally, he answered, "Because leaving someone behind is worse than dying." The word struck her like a blade. She had heard stories of humans being merciless, of humans conquering, destroying, surviving at any cost. But this man carried her like she was his kin, like her life mattered more than. His comfort, in the distance, a low howl echoed. The hunters were closer now. The girl trembled, fear tightening her chest. She whispered once more, "Please." "Leave me before it is too late." But the human only adjusted his grip, pulling her closer against his chest. His exoskeleton shifted with a hiss, metal plates locking into place as if preparing for a fight. He did not speak this time. He only walked faster. Each sound of the hunters behind them made the moment heavier. The wasteland was a graveyard, and both of them knew they might not survive. But in that desperate march, one thing became clear. The human had made his choice, no matter what came. No matter what danger stalked them, he would not let her die alone. The wasteland stretched like a never-ending ocean of dust and broken stone. The human's boots sank into the ash with every step, his exoskeleton groaning under the weight. The alien girl in his arms could feel the rhythm of his movements, steady and stubborn. She could also feel his heartbeat, fast but unyielding. The sky above was a sheet of gray, clouds thick with smoke. The faint red glow of the sun barely touched the land, and the air tasted of metal and fire. The human's visor displayed warnings: battery at 30%, oxygen filters clogging, hydraulic pressure unstable. But he ignored the alerts. His focus was on walking forward. The girl stirred weakly in his arms. Her body ached with pain, her leg useless, her strength fading more with every mile. "You cannot keep this up," she whispered, her voice dry. "Even your machine will fail soon." He glanced down at her but said nothing. His jaw was tight, his eyes hidden behind the cracked visor. He simply shifted her weight more securely and pushed forward. His silence was louder than words. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. The wasteland had no sense of time. The ground was broken, littered with rusted metal, shattered vehicles, and burned bones. The girl's golden eyes looked around, remembering how this land was once fertile before the war. Now it was nothing but poison and ruin. She felt guilt, pressing on her chest. If he kept carrying her, he would die. Humans valued survival above all else, yet this one chose differently. "Why do you resist reason?" she whispered again. "I am not worth this." Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "You're alive. That's enough reason." The words confused her. In her world, worth was measured by rank, bloodline, or usefulness. In his words, there was no calculation, no bargain, just a stubborn belief that life itself had value. They moved through the ruins of an old transport station, rusted rails twisted into strange shapes, broken cargo containers scattered like toys. He stepped over a fallen beam, the exoskeleton creaking louder now. Sparks flickered from one of the joints. The girl pressed her hands weakly against his chest. "It will break soon," she whispered, "and then you will not even have the strength to fight." He gave a short, rough laugh. "Then I'll crawl," he said. The sound of his voice carried a strange warmth, even in the middle of death. Behind them, faint growls echoed again. The hunters were still tracking them, following their scent and the sound of the exoskeleton. They moved in the shadows, waiting for the human to collapse. The girl shivered, clutching his armor tightly. She had seen those beasts tear through squads of soldiers, and now they were being hunted with no place to hide. The human stopped suddenly, crouching near a broken wall. He set her down carefully. Leaning her against a slab of stone, she tried to sit up, confusion in her eyes. "What are you doing?" He pulled a small device from his belt, an old earth tool. He pressed a button, and a loud, high-pitched screech filled the air. The girl winced from the sound, but then she understood. In the distance, the hunters howled in frustration, scattering away from the painful noise. "Sometimes you don't need to fight," he said simply as he lifted her again. The girl stared at him, surprised at his cleverness. Humans were not only strong, they were cunning. The march continued, step after step. His breath grew heavier, his body trembling inside the exoskeleton, but he refused to stop. Every time the girl begged him to let her go, he answered with the same silence or the same stubborn words, "Not leaving you." As the second day began, the wasteland grew colder. Winds howled through the broken buildings, carrying ash and whispers of war. The human's eyes burned from exhaustion, but he kept going. His exoskeleton hummed with fading energy, red warning lights flashing more urgently now. The girl looked up at him, her voice soft, almost breaking. "Why risk so much for me?" she asked. "You do not even know my name." For a long time he said nothing. Then, in a voice almost like a whisper, he answered, "Because once I left someone behind, I won't do it again." The girl's heart tightened. She wanted to ask more, but the look on his face told her not to. Pain lived in his eyes, hidden behind steel and silence. She realized then, this was not about her, alone. This was about a promise he made to himself long ago. The endless march continued. Every step was a battle. Every breath was a fight. Yet through it all, The human carried her without hesitation, and for the first time in her life, the alien girl felt something she never expected from a human: safety. The second night fell over the wasteland. Darkness swallowed the broken land. The only light came from the pale glow of the human's visor and the faint flicker of burning wreckage in the distance. The girl in his arms stirred weakly, her head resting against his chest. Every breath she took was shallow, and every sound behind them grew sharper in her ears. The hunters were closer now. They were not ordinary beasts, but creations of war, alien creatures with steel-hard claws and eyes that glowed like fire in the dark. Their bodies moved low to the ground, almost silent, but their guttural growls betrayed their hunger. They had tracked the human and the girl for 2 days, waiting for weakness, waiting for the moment to strike. The human stopped near a collapsed structure. The exoskeleton hissed as he lowered her carefully against a stone wall. He knelt, placing one hand on the ground. His eyes scanned the darkness. His ears caught every sound: the crunch of ash, the rattle of claws, the faint howl carried by the wind. "They're coming," the girl whispered, her golden eyes wide with fear. Her people knew these hunters well. Once they were unleashed, they never stopped until they had their prey. "You cannot fight them while carrying me," she said. "You cannot fight them alone." The human didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a small metal rod from his belt, flicked a switch, and it sparked to life. A crude plasma torch. He stabbed it into a piece of scrap metal and let it burn bright. The light cut through the dark, casting long shadows. The hunters growled from the distance, circling, waiting. The exoskeleton creaked as the human stood tall again. He adjusted, his grip on the girl. His voice was calm but heavy. "Hold on to me." The girl's hands clutched his chest plate. She felt the vibration of his heart pounding beneath the armor. Her body trembled as the first pair of glowing eyes appeared between the ruins. Then another, then more. Dozens of hunters crawled into sight. Surrounding them, their growls echoed in unison, a sound that made the ground tremble. The human's visor displayed flashing warnings: power low, hydraulic strained, battery red. Yet his stance didn't waver. His eyes scanned the terrain. His mind worked quickly. He could not outfight them head-on, not while carrying her, but humans were never known for fighting fair. With one swift motion, he kicked the plasma torch free. It clattered to the ground, flames licking at the rubble. The nearest hunters shrieked at the sudden fire, instinct driving them back for a moment. That moment was all he needed. He shifted his weight, turned sharply, and moved into the ruins. His boots pounded against broken stone. The girl clung to him tightly, her fear mixing with confusion. "You cannot escape them," she whispered. "They will follow. They will never stop." "Then I'll make them slow down," he muttered. He weaved through shattered corridors, setting small traps as he passed. An old earth trick. Wires stretched, low across doorways, sharp rubble piled high at choke points. The hunters didn't think, they only chased, and soon the ruins echoed with the sounds of snarls and crashes as beasts tripped, slammed into stone, or tore themselves on jagged metal. Still more came. The human's breaths grew louder, every inhale a rasp, every exhale heavy. His exoskeleton hissed as if protesting with every step. Sparks flickered from the joints, but he pushed on. His arms never let go of her. The girl pressed her forehead against his armor, her voice trembling. "Why? Why do you fight so hard for me?" she asked. "I am nothing to you. I am your enemy." His voice was strained but firm. "Not my enemy now." The words struck her deeper than any blade. She had grown up hearing that humans were ruthless, that they cared only for themselves. But here he was, burning his last strength to protect her. A sudden roar tore through the night. The largest of the hunters emerged. Its body towering, its eyes blazing red. Its claws tore through the rubble as it lunged forward. The ground shook beneath its charge. The human stopped running. He planted his boots, adjusted his grip on her, and turned his body to face the beast. The exoskeleton whirred, locking into combat stance. His free hand reached for a shard of metal pipe on the ground. The girl's eyes widened in terror. "You can't fight it," she cried. "Not while carrying me." He gave her a small, grim Smile. Watch me. The beast roared again and lunged. The human sidestepped just enough, slamming the pipe into its flank. The force jolted his arm, nearly breaking it. But the exoskeleton absorbed the worst of it. The beast staggered, shrieking, but recovered quickly. Its massive head swung, jaws snapping. The human pushed forward, moving not to win but to survive. He used rubble as cover, fire as distraction. Every step he took was measured, every move designed to keep her safe. The hunters howled in fury, circling, waiting for him to fall. The girl clung to him, her heart racing. For the first time, she understood. This was not just survival, this was will. Humans were different. They refused to let go, even when the world demanded it. The fight stretched into the night, and though the human's body was breaking, his spirit was not. The hunters had not claimed them yet, and as long as he still stood, they never would. The night pressed down heavy. The ruins swallowed every sound, except for the distant growls of the hunters who circled but dared not come, too close to the faint fire the human had lit. The small flames flickered weakly, struggling against the cold wind. The girl lay propped against a broken wall, her body trembling, her wounds still bleeding slowly. The human knelt beside her, his exoskeleton creaking as he lowered himself to the ground. He checked the suit's readings: battery at 15%, hydraulics failing, oxygen filters clogged with ash. He should have been panicking, but instead his face remained calm. His eyes were sharp, watching the darkness beyond the fire. The girl's golden eyes studied him. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the lines carved deep by pain and years of fighting. Sweat dripped from his brow, his lips cracked, yet he had carried her without pause. She could not understand it. "Why?" she whispered, her voice weak. "Why didn't you leave me when you had the chance?" For a long moment he didn't answer. He poked the fire with a metal rod. Watching the sparks fly, his silence stretched, heavy like the air. Finally he spoke, his voice low, almost reluctant. "Because I know what it feels like, to be left behind." Her eyes widened slightly. She leaned closer despite her weakness. "You were abandoned." He nodded once, his gaze still on the flames. "A long time ago, on another battlefield," he said. His voice was rough, as if each word scraped his throat. "I carried a man on my back, same as I carry you now. We were close, brothers in arms, but I was slower with him, and when the enemy came, I panicked, I dropped him, I ran." The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. His eyes hardened, shadows flickering across his face. "He called my name until the end, and I didn't turn back. I lived, but every day since I hear his voice begging me not to leave." The girl's throat tightened. She saw something she never expected from a human soldier. Not coldness, not brutality, but guilt. A wound deeper than any blade. "So now," he said, lifting his eyes to hers, "I will never drop anyone again, not even you." Her lips trembled. She looked away, shame burning in her chest. Her people had always taught her that humans were selfish, that they valued nothing but themselves, but here was proof that was not true. He carried her not because she was useful, not because she was strong, but because she was alive. The wind howled through the ruins, shaking the fragile fire. Beyond the light, shadows moved, the hunters prowling, waiting for the flames to die. Their growls rumbled like thunder, but they kept their distance, wary of the strange human who had already wounded some of their kind. The girl hugged her broken leg close even though the pain was sharp. She whispered, "If you die because of me, your people will curse my name. They will say an alien girl brought down a soldier." He gave a tired smile, one corner of his mouth lifting. "Let them talk," he said. "What matters is not what they say, but what I choose to do." She blinked, stunned by his words. Her own people measured every act by reputation and pride, but he dismissed it as if it meant nothing. For a while, they sat in silence, the fire their only company. The girl found herself staring at him, wondering what kind of strength humans carried inside them, not in their machines, not in their weapons, but in their hearts. Suddenly, a sharp howl cut through. The night, closer this time, the hunters were gathering again. The human stood at once, his exoskeleton whining in protest. He grabbed a jagged pipe from the ground, his movements quick despite his exhaustion. He glanced back at her. "Stay awake. If the fire dies, they will rush in." She nodded weakly, her hands trembling as she fed broken wood into the flames. Her eyes followed him as he stepped into the shadows, the glow of the fire catching the edge of his armor. He looked like a ghost, fighting in silence, moving between ruins to keep the beasts away. Minutes stretched into hours. The girl forced herself to keep the fire alive, each spark of light pushing back the darkness, each crackle of flame keeping death at bay. Her heart pounded with every growl, every snarl, every sound of claws scraping stone. At last, the human returned, his chest heaving, his armor scratched, blood trickling from a cut on his cheek. He dropped down beside her, too tired to speak. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched his arm gently. "You shouldn't waste your strength for me," she whispered. He turned his head, eyes half closed, and gave her a faint, stubborn smile. "It's not wasted." The words sank into her heart like fire. She lowered her hand slowly, her eyes stinging with tears. For the first time since the war began, she felt something new: trust. The fire burned low. The night deepened. But in that fragile circle of light, something stronger than fear was born. The memory of his past pain, his confession and his promise became a bond between them. And though the hunters still prowled, waiting for their chance, the girl knew one thing with certainty: this human would not let her die alone. The third day began with a bitter wind. The wasteland stretched endless before them, its horizon a blur of ash and broken stone. The human's exoskeleton hissed with every movement, sparks flickering near the joints. His face was pale, his lips cracked, and his breathing ragged. Yet still he carried the alien girl close to his chest. Step after step, the girl opened her eyes weakly. She had drifted in and out of consciousness through the night, waking to the sound of hunters growling in the distance and the faint crackle of fire. Now, with daylight creeping over the wasteland, she looked at him with growing fear. His movements were slower, each step heavier. His body trembled under the strain. "You are breaking," she whispered, her golden eyes full of worry. "Even your machine cannot carry us forever." The human gave no answer. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, his jaw clenched tight. He knew she was right. The exoskeleton's battery gauge blinked red. Only 10% power remained. The hydraulics were grinding, the servos overheating. Every alert screamed failure, but he pressed forward. Hours passed. The sun rose higher, though its light was dim behind the ash clouds. Heat radiated from the broken ground. The human's back burned with sweat. His muscles screamed with every step. His arms ached from holding her weight. Still, he did not stop. Suddenly, his legs buckled. The exoskeleton screeched as if in pain, and both of them fell hard to the ground. Dust exploded around them. The girl gasped, her hands gripping his armor. "Stop," she cried. "You will kill yourself." He groaned, struggling to push himself up. The suit sparked dangerously, one of its leg joints nearly torn. His arms shook violently. He wanted to rise, but his body betrayed him. For the first time since their journey began, she saw fear flash across his face. Not fear of the hunters, not fear of death, but fear of failing her. He pressed his hands to the ground, veins straining at his neck. "Not stopping," he growled. The girl's chest tightened. Tears pricked her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why destroy yourself for me? I am nothing to you." He forced himself to his knees, lifted her again with trembling arms. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Because no one is nothing." Her breath caught in her throat. She had lived her life believing strength and rank determined worth. But this human shattered that belief with simple words. His spirit seemed stronger than his failing body. They stumbled, forward once more. The wasteland seemed crueler now, each step a mountain, each breath a battle. His visor dimmed as the power drained. Warning lights filled his vision, he ignored them all. By midday, the wind grew harsher, carrying ash and the faint roars of hunters still trailing them. The girl clutched his chest, her heart pounding. She could feel his body weakening, his heartbeat slower, heavier. She whispered desperately, "Please, let me down. You can still save yourself. Leave me, and they will not follow you." His reply came like steel, "Not leaving you." The words were stubborn, but his body was reaching its limit. His legs shook, his back bent, his exoskeleton hissed and sputtered. Suddenly, the power cut, and the suit locked for a moment before shutting down completely. He fell again, crashing into the ash. She tumbled with him, landing hard. The girl cried out, dragging herself with her hands to his side. His helmet cracked, showing his weary face beneath, pale and covered in sweat. His lips were dry, his breath shallow. He looked half dead already. She grabbed his shoulder, her voice breaking. "Enough. You cannot save me like this. You will die, and then both of us will be lost." His eyes opened, slowly, meeting hers. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then he whispered, "If I die carrying you, at least I didn't fail again." Her heart shattered. She pressed her forehead against his armor, tears running down her face. She wanted to hate his stubbornness, but instead she felt something else, a warmth in her chest, something she had never known. With shaking hands, she tried to push herself up. "Then let me walk. I may be broken, but I can still move," she said, her voice desperate. "I will not let you die for me." He forced a faint smile, though his body barely moved. "We'll walk together then." Summoning the last bit of strength, he pushed himself onto his knees. Sweat poured from his brow, his arms trembling as he lifted her once more. This time he didn't rise tall and strong. He staggered, hunched, his body bending under the weight. But he kept moving step after step. The girl could hear the hunters in the distance again, their howls closer, smelling weakness, smelling blood. She wrapped her arms tightly around him, whispering through her, "Tears, then hurry before they come." He nodded faintly, his voice no more than a breath. 3 days, that's all, just 3 days. Every part of his body screamed in pain, every muscle begged him to collapse again. But his spirit was louder. He would not stop. He would not abandon her, not now, not ever. And so the second collapse passed not as an end, but as proof of his will. A man broken in body, yet unbroken in soul, carrying her through the wasteland, though death itself followed close behind. The wasteland's edge was finally in sight. After 3 endless days of struggle, the human staggered forward with the alien girl still in his arms. His body was broken, his exoskeleton burned out, its joints barely moving. Every breath rattled in his chest, but his eyes were locked ahead. The distant shape of safety flickered like a dream, but dreams often ended in blood. From the haze of ash and smoke, enemy patrols emerged, armored figures with weapons gleaming. They spread out quickly, forming a wall between him and the horizon. Their alien voices barked orders, their rifles aimed steady. The girl's heart sank. She knew those soldiers. They were her people, ruthless and unyielding. If they saw her in his arms, they would kill him instantly, and perhaps her too for failing. The human stopped, his boots sinking into the ash, his chest heaved, sweat dripping into his cracked visor. He adjusted his grip on the girl. Holding her tighter, she looked up at him, fear in her golden eyes. "You cannot fight them," she whispered. "You are already broken." He said nothing. His silence was heavier than words. His gaze never left the enemy ahead. Behind him, the low growls of the hunters rose again. The beasts had caught up. The trap had closed. They were surrounded, enemies before them, monsters behind them, his body failing, the girl trembling. Yet he stood. The alien commander stepped forward, his armor shining with cruel elegance. "Human," he growled, "drop the girl and surrender. Perhaps we will let you crawl away alive." The human's lips curled into something. Like a smile, weary but defiant, he whispered under his breath, "Not leaving her." The exoskeleton groaned as he shifted, locking its broken joints into place with sheer force. Sparks spat from the cracked hydraulics. The girl felt his body tremble beneath the armor, yet his stance remained tall. She clutched his chest plate, whispering desperately, "Please, don't fight. You cannot win this." His voice was a whisper in her ear, steady despite the storm inside him. "I don't need to win. I just need to protect you." The enemy soldiers raised their rifles. Glowing barrels humming, the commander shouted, "Fire!" But before the shots could land, the hunters behind them howled and charged. Dozens of glowing eyes tore through the darkness, claws scraping stone. The beasts leapt into the soldiers, flanked their hunger uncontrollable. Chaos exploded. Screams, gunfire, and roars shook the wasteland. The human seized the chance. He sprinted forward, or tried to. His body was barely holding. His knees buckled with every step, but he forced himself on. The girl clung to him, her eyes wide as the world around them. Burned in battle. One soldier broke through the chaos, aiming at the human. The shot cracked, blazing toward them. The man twisted, his exoskeleton's shattered arm plate taking the hit. Metal shattered, pain flared, but he kept running. His teeth clenched, his vision blurring. His arms refused to drop her. Another enemy lunged with a blade. The human swung his elbow, slamming the soldier into rubble. The exoskeleton's servos screamed in protest. He nearly fell with the force, but he did not stop. The girl's voice rose in panic. "Stop, you are dying, you can't hold on." His reply was a ragged whisper. "I told you. 3 days." Step after step, he fought like a cornered beast. His body broken, his machine collapsing, but his will burning brighter than ever. He was human, and that meant he did not quit. The commander roared, cutting through soldiers and beasts alike to reach him. His blade flashed, striking at the human. The man turned his body, shielding the girl with his own frame. The blade tore across his side, blood spraying. He staggered but stayed upright. The girl screamed, her tears spilling, "You'll die, stop, please." But his grip on her never loosened. His eyes locked on the horizon beyond the battle. His voice rasped, "If I fall carrying you." The commander raised his blade again, ready to end him, but before it struck, a thunderous sound filled the sky. Engines roared, beams of light cutting through the clouds. Human dropships descended, their cannons blazing. The battlefield shook. Under the fury of reinforcements, the enemy soldiers scattered. The hunters shrieked. The commander cursed and vanished into the chaos. The human collapsed to his knees. His arms still locked around the girl. His visor cracked completely, revealing his face. Pale, bloodied, but with eyes that burned with unbroken fire. The girl clutched his armor, her tears falling on his chest. Why go so far for me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. His breath rattled, but his words were steady. "Because no one deserves to be left behind." All around them, the battle shifted. Allies rushed forward, voices shouting. But for that moment, only the two of them existed in the ruins. A broken man who refused to give up, and a girl who finally understood the meaning of humanity. And though his body was at its end, his spirit stood tall, for he had carried her through 3 days of hell, and even here, surrounded by death, he still carried her hope. The battlefield burned with chaos. Human dropships thundered overhead, their cannons tearing through enemy lines. Smoke and fire swallowed the wasteland. Soldiers shouted, engines roared, and the hunters shrieked as they were driven back by blinding light. In the center of it all, the human knelt in the ash, his exoskeleton sparking, his body trembling from exhaustion and blood loss. Yet his arms were still locked around the alien girl. His cracked visor had fallen away, and his face was bare, pale, and streaked with sweat and dust. His eyes, though heavy with pain, still burned with the same stubborn fire. The girl looked up at him, tears glistening in her golden eyes. "It's over," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't need to carry me anymore." But he shook his head slowly, pulling her tighter against his chest. His lips cracked into the faintest of smiles. "Not until you're safe." Allied human soldiers rushed toward them. Their armor gleamed under the dropship lights. One knelt beside the man, eyes widening as he saw the alien girl in his arms. "Sir, put her down. We'll handle it," the soldier said urgently. But the human snarled weakly, his voice raw. "No, I carry her." The girl's throat tightened. Her people would never understand such words, never accept such stubborn loyalty. Yet here he was, refusing to let go even when surrounded by help. He had sworn not to abandon her, and he would keep that promise until his body gave out. The soldiers hesitated, then nodded. They cleared a path, covering him as he staggered to his feet once more. His legs buckled, his exoskeleton screeched, but his arms never loosened. Step by step, he carried her toward the waiting dropship. The girl clutched his chest plate, her tears streaming. "Why?" she whispered again, her voice breaking. "Why do you still hold me? After everything, after almost dying?" He glanced down at her, his breath ragged. His words were soft but unshakable. "Because I promised myself. No one gets left behind again." She buried her face against his chest, her heart twisting. Her people had abandoned her in battle, but this human carried her through 3 days of hell. He had bled for her, fought for her, nearly died for her, and still he would not let her go. The dropship ramp lowered, steam hissing. "Inside," medics shouted, waving for him to hurry. The human stumbled, nearly falling, but he forced his body to move, his vision blurred, the world tilting. Every step was agony. His knees shook, his ribs ached, his lungs burned, but he kept going. One step, then another. At last he reached the ramp. His knees gave out and he collapsed inside, still cradling her as if the world might steal her away. Medics rushed forward, trying to take her from his arms. He fought weakly against them, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Don't drop her." The girl's tears fell faster. She reached up with trembling fingers and touched his cheek. "You saved me," she whispered. "You carried me when I begged you not to. You gave me life when I had given up." His eyelids fluttered, heavy, his voice barely a breath. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." He slumped back as the medics worked, pulling wires, patching wounds, fighting to keep him alive. The girl clung to his hand, refusing to let go. She felt his strength fading, but she also felt something else, his promise, unbroken. As the dropship lifted into the sky, the battlefield shrinking below, the girl looked at him with a new fire in her eyes. She had been raised to see humans as cold survivors, selfish and brutal. But this man had carried her through death, itself proving something greater. She whispered softly, "You are not just human, you are hope." His lips curved faintly, though he was slipping into unconsciousness. "Hope," he repeated, and then his eyes closed. The medics shouted, their hands working quickly. The dropship roared higher into the clouds. The girl sat by his side, still holding his hand tightly. She would not let go, not after he refused to let her go for 3 long days. When at last his breathing steadied, weak but alive, she closed her eyes in relief. Her body ached, her wounds burned, but her heart felt lighter, for she knew the truth now. Humanity was not what she had been told. It was something fiercer, something unyielding, and as the dropship carried them away from the wasteland, she made her own silent vow. Just as he had carried her, she would carry his promise. She would tell her people what she had seen, what she had felt, that one human, broken in body but unbroken in spirit, had saved her not with power, but with a will that refused to let anyone fall. The wasteland was behind them, but the memory of those 3 days would remain forever. A story not of war, but of a man who chose compassion over fear, loyalty over survival, a promise fulfilled.